Within your first week, you'll need investors, food, ammunition, sailors, replacement sales, weapons, repair money, and somewhere to sell stolen cargo. Fail any one of those, and your business ends at the bottom of the Atlantic. Pirates didn't just wake up rich. They ran floating companies with payroll, supply chains, and constant bankruptcy risk. Here's how that business actually worked, and why most of them went broke before they went legendary. A pirate ship wasn't stolen off a dock. It was captured, bought, or built, and each option came with a price tag. Most successful pirate captains started with a smaller sloop, cheap to acquire, but fast enough to catch merchant vessels. The real ship came later, seized mid-career, the way Blackbeard turned a captured French slaver into the Queen Anne's Revenge. Cannons alone could bankrupt an amateur. A single ship might carry 12 to 40 guns, each one expensive to buy, mount, and feed with powder and shot. Add rigging, sails, and hull repairs, and a pirate venture needed serious capital before a single ship was robbed. So where did broke sailors get that capital? Often, they didn't pay for it themselves. Colonial merchants, corrupt governors, and even legitimate investors quietly financed pirate voyages in exchange for a cut of the plunder, the 17th century version of venture capital. Henry Morgan operated with something close to state backing, sailing under semi-official privateering commissions that blurred the line between piracy and government-sanctioned warfare. Startup capital secured, ship acquired. Now came the harder problem, staffing it. Running a pirate ship meant recruiting a small workforce of specialists, not just angry men with knives. You needed sailors to handle the rigging, gunners trained to load and fire cannon under pressure, carpenters to patch hull damage mid-voyage, and, critically, a surgeon, because untreated wounds killed more crews than cannon fire did. You also needed a navigator who could read charts and currents well enough to outrun the Royal Navy, and two very different kinds of leadership: a captain who commanded during battle, and a quartermaster who managed discipline, supplies, and the fair division of plunder. On many ships, the quartermaster held more day-to-day power than the captain himself. Why would a trained sailor risk a rope around his neck to join this crew? Because merchant navy work was brutal, underpaid, and often unpaid outright. Pirate crews offered something almost nowhere else in the maritime world offered: a share of the profits, a vote in decisions, and a chance at real money. For skilled tradesmen stuck in poverty, piracy wasn't reckless. It was often the better financial option. But recruiting people is easy. Paying them fairly, without the whole operation collapsing into mutiny, was the real challenge. Before a ship even left port, the crew signed something closer to a corporate contract than a criminal pact: the Articles of Agreement. This document set out exactly how plunder would be divided, what behavior was banned, and what happened if someone broke the rules. Payment wasn't a flat wage. It was a share system. The captain typically received 1.5 to 2 shares of the total haul. The quartermaster earned a similar premium for his responsibilities. Ordinary crew members received 1 full share each, while specialists like the surgeon sometimes earned a bonus on top, since his skills were harder to replace. The system also included something remarkably modern: injury compensation. Lose an arm, and you were owed a fixed payout, often several hundred pieces of 8. Lose a leg, and the payout was set even higher. This wasn't charity. It was insurance, negotiated in advance, because everyone on board knew the risks of the job. Bartholomew Roberts's articles even banned gambling and limited drinking hours before battle, because a functioning business, even a criminal one, couldn't survive constant infighting. Payroll was settled, but keeping this business running day to day cost far more than anyone expected. A pirate ship at sea was a business burning cash every single day, whether or not it captured anything. Food spoiled fast in tropical heat, so crews constantly needed fresh meat, water, and rum. Rum wasn't just recreation. It was often safer to drink than contaminated water on long voyages. Gunpowder and cannonballs had to be resupplied after every engagement, and rope and canvas wore out from constant use, requiring regular replacement just to keep the ship seaworthy. Hull damage from storms or cannon fire needed carpentry supplies and skilled labor to fix before it became fatal. None of this could be bought at a normal port, because pirates were wanted men in most of them. Instead, they relied on hidden coves, sympathetic island communities, and black market suppliers willing to sell provisions quietly for a price well above market rate. Every restock was a logistics problem and a security risk rolled into one. Which raised an even bigger issue. Pirates could steal enormous quantities of cargo, but stolen silk, sugar, and spices were worthless unless someone was willing to buy them. You can't walk into a legitimate port and sell a ship full of stolen cargo. Pirates needed a functioning black market economy just to convert plunder into usable currency, and that economy depended on corruption. Certain Caribbean ports, like Nassau in its early years, became semi-official pirate havens, where local merchants and even colonial officials turned a blind eye in exchange for a cut of the trade. Smugglers and fences acted as middlemen, buying stolen goods cheap and reselling them through legitimate-looking channels elsewhere. William Kidd's downfall came partly from this exact problem. His backers and buyers turned against him once his piracy became a political liability, leaving him without a market and without protection. The most successful pirates weren't just good fighters. They were the ones who maintained reliable relationships with corrupt officials and merchants willing to launder stolen goods. Supply chains secured, customers found. But none of that mattered if the business itself didn't survive long enough to cash in.
Every pirate voyage carried existential risk, and the Royal Navy was only the most obvious one. Warships specifically hunted pirate crews, and capture usually meant a public execution, not a fair trial. Storms could destroy a ship in hours, disease could wipe out a crew faster than any battle, and overcrowded, unsanitary conditions made outbreaks common on long voyages. Internal risk was just as dangerous. A captain who mismanaged shares or broke the articles could face mutiny, sometimes ending in his own execution by his own crew. Edward Lowe built a reputation as one of the most violent captains of the era, and that reputation eventually made him a primary target for naval fleets across multiple colonies, shortening his operational lifespan dramatically. In this business, cruelty and instability weren't just moral failures. They were strategic liabilities that increased the odds of getting hunted down. So after covering startup costs, payroll, operating expenses, and constant risk, did piracy actually make financial sense? A single successful raid could generate enormous revenue. Bartholomew Roberts alone is estimated to have captured over 400 vessels during his career, an extraordinary haul by any standard. But revenue wasn't profit. Subtract the cost of gunpowder, food, rope, repairs, and black market resupply. Subtract crew shares, which could run to dozens or even hundreds of individual payouts. Subtract injury compensation for the wounded. Subtract the bribes required to access safe ports and buyers. What remained was often far smaller than the headline number suggested, and the business itself had a brutally short expected lifespan. Most pirate captains operated for only a few years before capture, death in battle, or execution ended the venture entirely. The probability of a pirate career ending in bankruptcy, prison, or the gallows was extremely high. Historians estimate the majority of pirates active during the Golden Age were dead or captured within 2 to 3 years. Piracy could generate life-changing money in a single raid, but as a sustained business model, it was almost never stable, and it was never safe. So, if you wanted to operate a pirate ship in the Golden Age of Piracy, here's what the job actually required. Startup capital to acquire and arm a ship, a skilled workforce recruited through profit sharing rather than wages, A formal payroll system with built-in injury insurance, constant operating expenses for food, ammunition, and repairs, a black market network to convert stolen goods into real currency, and a level of risk management that most legitimate businesses never had to face. Because failure didn't just mean losing money, it meant losing your life. Most pirate businesses collapsed not because their targets fought back, but because the economics eventually caught up with them. Supply costs, crew disputes, dwindling safe ports, and relentless naval pressure ground even the most successful operations down within a few short years. Pirates weren't remembered because they became rich. They were remembered because they briefly built one of history's most dangerous business models.